E3 has been crazy. There is so much to talk about, so much information to go over right now. So if you're one of the people who missed out on something to do with Dragon Ball Kakarot or even another game, don't worry, I've got your back. Because today we're going to go over everything about Dragon Ball Kakarot, because over the last 48 hours, I've gone from feeling nothing towards this game. Not excitement, not disappointment, just very neutral. But now I'm incredibly hyped because they've shown off so much to do with the game, what the gameplay loop's going to be like, how far we can expect the game to go, different mechanics, how the game is actually going to play. So I just wanted to go over everything, and that way there's everything you need to know in one spot. So far, based on the footage we've seen, it looks like the game is going to start somewhere slightly before the beginning of Dragon Ball Z and lead all the way up until the Frieza saga. It's possible the game is going to go past the Frieza saga, but we haven't seen anything to suggest that so far. But how does the game actually play? That's what I'm most interested in. I'm not going to be talking about combat in this video because it's an entirely separate subject and it's going to take me a long time to break it all down. So I will be doing an entirely separate video on that. So if you're interested in that, make sure you're subscribed and you're doing all that good stuff. The gameplay loop appears to follow a somewhat typical RPG. You're going to be doing a lot of free roaming, or in this case, flying, because, you know, it's Dragon Ball. The somewhat open world will be filled with side quests. I'd imagine these side quests will feature both original characters and characters that come from the anime that you already know and love. The side quests appear to be somewhat menial tasks so far anyway. Like for example, murdering these innocent deer who did nothing to you and attaching a tail to catch some fish. But I'd imagine some of these side quests will feature more exciting things like combat, but obviously they don't want to show off too much just yet. In some of the footage that has been released over the last 48 hours, I'm sure you've seen some of these Z medals in the sky. You probably wondered what exactly those are. Previously, I assumed it was some type of currency, but according to a question, or according to an answer from a question that was posed to Dimitri, who is a community specialist at Bandai Namco, they're basically XP points. While traversing this land of Dragon Ball, you'll be able to fly, roll, ki blast, search for ki, which probably means searching for enemies, boost, which I would imagine just means go fast, examine and talk to people, dash and jump. For those more hardcore fans out there, you may be wondering, will this game actually have a collector's edition? Dimitri was asked this question, and he gave a sort of non-answer that's pretty typical for unannounced information. It was something along the lines of, we haven't talked about that publicly yet. That type of answer sounds intentionally vague to me. This is just speculation at this point, but I do think the game will have a collector's edition that will be announced at a later date. It's probably just not ready for us yet. There'll probably be a statue and some other collector's goodies that you can expect to see from most collector's editions. I know I said I wouldn't mention the combat system, but I will say one thing. Dimitri was asked something specific about the combat system. I forget what it was, but his response was interesting to me. He specifically said that the combat system was designed with multi-enemy scenarios in mind, which might explain why the combat system seems a little bit simple in 1 versus 1 encounters, which seems odd to me because of all of the footage we've seen so far, there has only been 1v1 encounters. That being said, we haven't seen a lot of footage. We've only seen Raditz versus Goku and Frieza versus Goku. Again, this leads me to believe that Bandai is going to keep a lot of information about this game close to their chest. When the player opens up the start menu, you'll see quite a lot. You'll see items, party, characters, story, community, Dragon Balls, and system. System is boring, it's probably just an options menu. Community is interesting, this could be anything. Perhaps it's some type of leaderboard. Story is probably how you're going to be accessing your main story missions, and perhaps maybe even a way to replay previously played missions. Initially, I thought characters could be some type of access to different support characters, but that probably isn't the case because the party menu right above is probably how you change out your support characters and give them different pieces of equipment. So this character menu is probably just some type of database giving you a short description of each character, and if they're playable or if they're a support type, it might give you the name of their ability or something like that. But I think even non-playable characters or even characters you can't equip as supports will probably be in this character database, maybe even villains. I don't know how many of you have played the Batman Arkham games, but you've got a character menu in that where you can see descriptions of characters and a little bit of their backstory. This menu might be something like that. The Dragon Ball menu is kind of weird because in a game, this could literally be anything. But based on the menus we see here, I think it could actually be something to do with the party members. Perhaps maybe party members can die. I don't know how this would happen, but maybe after Goku dies in combat, instead of having him die, because canonically you can't have him die because you need to play with him in this game, so perhaps maybe maybe when you die, one of your party members passes, and then you can use the Dragon Balls to resurrect them. That's entirely speculation, but I think it's pretty reasonable speculation. If you can come up with an alternative use for the Dragon Balls, let me know in the comment section below. We haven't seen a lot of information about how items actually work, but for example, this beast meat here gives +1 attack, and you can equip it to either your player character or your support character. What I do find interesting about this menu is that it doesn't seem to specifically say that Goku is the player and that Piccolo is a support character. There's just a support tag on Piccolo and a player tag on Goku, almost as if you could switch between the two as player or support. Now, I'm not confirming that here, I'm just saying that the UI seems to suggest that you could theoretically switch them around, though it doesn't confirm it. Oh my god, I almost forgot to put this part in the video. There's a point in the gameplay where a player pulls up the map, and there's a lot of information to go over on this map. You could look at the icons on the map, but that's less interesting because there's a whole menu on the right-hand side going over what these things are. We have your current location, which should be pretty obvious, your main story, and your sub-story. So obviously sub-story is side missions, and main story is main missions. A guide, not sure what the guide is supposed to do. Perhaps maybe some type of fast travel system, or it could just be like the tutorial missions. Grocer is probably how you obtain already cooked food, or maybe even just some type of supplies. Trader is likely how you get items and things like that. You probably exchange some type of currency. Cooks can probably mass cook food for you, or even teach you how to cook certain material. But interestingly enough, there's another thing called cooking, in which I would imagine you go to places to cook your own food if that's what you want to do. There's also R&D, which stands for research and development. So perhaps maybe that's how you can upgrade different pieces of gear. Then you've got training grounds. This is probably where you can get some XP. Fruit trees probably allow you to obtain some type of resource, whether it be something that replenishes your MP, which is another mechanic we'll talk about in the future video. You've got mineral deposits, again, probably something to do with the collection system pertaining to the whole RPG aspects of the game. Dinosaur habitats, that's probably where you can fight dinosaurs or collect their meat in some form or fashion. And then fishing, we've already seen what fishing does. And nice to know that there's a marker system, so you can mark a specific location on the map that you would like to go to, or even just something you want to remember. Maybe you spot something cool in the world and you're like, oh, I'll come back and look at this later. You can leave a marker there for yourself. Finally, I do want to touch on something that is pretty new information. Dimitri just got this question on a live stream, and it was a question about versus mode. He said his standard, we haven't talked about that publicly yet, which on its own wouldn't be enough for me to assume that anything as large as a versus mode would actually happen. But right before that, he gave a big,
is there a versus mode? Nothing that we've really talked about when it comes to a versus mode.
Which was very suggestive to me. It makes it feel like versus mode might actually be a thing. And just to give you an idea of how big of a deal that would be, for example, if versus mode was confirmed right now, there's a lot of implications that come along with that. If there's a versus mode, there's probably an online version of that versus mode. And if there's an online version of that versus mode, there's probably more characters than just Goku you can play. If there's more characters than Goku you can play, does that mean you can play other characters throughout the story mode? If you do that, does that change the events of said story mode? Does that mean you can go past the Frieza saga and play someone like Gohan during the Cell saga? This is a very big discussion that gets rolling with the idea of a versus mode. So I don't want to talk about that too much because that gets into an entirely different area of speculation, but I do think that was very interesting. In my next video, I'll be talking all about the combat system. I'm not sure if that will go up today or tomorrow. It depends how long it takes me because it will be quite a long video. But if you are interested in that, make sure you're subscribed. You leave a like on this video because it does help other people find it, and I'm jumping into a new game now that I'll be covering pretty heavily, so all the support is very much appreciated. Don't worry, I'm not going to be leaving behind the other games that I cover, but I do want to cover this game quite closely now that I'm pretty excited about it. With that being said, I want to thank you so much for watching. My name has been Bilbzy, and I'll see you in the next video.